The automatic transmission is without a doubt one of the greatest innovations in automotive history, with manual transmissions amounting to less than 2% of all new car purchases. #Save the manuals. More and more car buyers are choosing an automatic transmission. At first glance, driving an automatic car may seem easier than driving a manual. However, this does not mean that drivers shouldn't take caution when driving an automatic car. Even though driving an automatic car may seem like a breeze, there are several fatal mistakes that you should avoid at all costs, from lazy driving maneuvers to destructive car modifications, and even poor driving skills. There are countless ways that you could unintentionally obliterate your automatic transmission.
So here are 9 things you should never do in an automatic transmission car.
Never shift from drive to reverse before your car stops moving. All of us have been guilty of this from time to time. Sometimes we can be impatient and shift our car from drive to reverse before coming to a complete stop. Although many drivers believe doing this can be harmless, in reality it can have dangerous consequences for your transmission. If you don't come to a complete stop before switching from drive to reverse and vice versa, you're using the transmission itself to stop the car, not the brakes. This causes your transmission's components to change direction rapidly, wearing out the gearbox very quickly. If your brakes wear down, replacing them will cost you around $100. But constantly shifting from drive to reverse while the car is still moving, prepare yourself for damage that could run you at least $3,000. Never put your car in park before it comes to a complete stop. Some newer cars won't even let you do this, due to speed sensors in the car's software. But if you have an older car and you've been known to do this from time to time, this next point is very important and can save your automatic transmission from irreversible damage. You should remember that park was made to keep your car from rolling away, but not to stop the car while moving. When your car is in park, its transmission is locked up. This means your car's wheels can't move, or that they can but with great difficulty. When you put the vehicle in park, a pin locks the transmission's output shaft, which are connected to the wheels of your car. Shifting to park while moving causes a locking pin to be inserted into a gear the car's moving wheels are also connected to. So when you lock it and keep the vehicle rolling at the same time, there's a risk of breaking the locking pin, which can cost you thousands of dollars to fix. Don't brake during a blowout. The knee-jerk reaction to pretty much all panicky driving moments is to hit the brakes as hard and as fast as possible. In most cases, this is absolutely correct. That being said, imagine you're cruising down the highway at about 65 miles per hour, when all of a sudden you hear your rear tire explode like you just ran over a tiny landmine. Your heart is pounding a mile a minute. The steering wheel starts to shake violently, and you can feel the car losing control. What do? A. Hit the brakes. B. Hit the gas. Or C. Turn to the side of the road as soon as possible. If you follow your instincts, you're probably going to hit the brakes. But in this case, your instincts have tragically failed you. C. If you brake during a blowout, you're almost certain to fishtail, and maybe flip, possibly into another fast-moving car or the median, or both. This is particularly true if your rear tire has blown out, which is more likely to happen than a front tire blowout. So in the event of a blowout, you must do everything that makes the least sense. Hit the gas. You don't need to hit it like you have 5 stars in GTA. Just squeeze the gas firmly for a couple of seconds to regain control, keeping the car as straight as possible. Getting ahead of another car safely. Every now and then you have to pass another car on a 2-lane road to get to your destination faster, and quite often another car pops out of nowhere moving in your direction on the lane that you chose for your maneuver. Whenever you feel like you don't have enough time to clear the other car, flash your turn signals indicating the direction you'll turn to. Researchers have determined that over 60% of crashes occurring while passing a vehicle actually occur on the road shoulder, rather than the opposite lane the person passing uses to get around another vehicle. Using your turn signal will help you avoid an accident, because they often happen on the shoulder when both cars choose to get there to avoid one another. As a result, it's not only crucial that you use your turn signal while avoiding the car in the opposite lane, but it's also always a better idea to turn back into your lane and not to the side of the road, where statistically you have a higher chance of hitting the opposite car head on. How to regain control when drifting. It's important to remember that drifting isn't something fatal, and it doesn't necessarily lead to accidents as long as you know what to do, by keeping calm and staying in control. To better understand drifting and its mechanics, let's discuss the 3 most common types. Number 1. Sliding. This case occurs when the front wheels are stable, but the rear wheels lose traction, resulting in the car to turn more than expected. Number 2. Drifting. The rear wheels are stable, but the front wheels slide and lose traction, causing the car to move forward when turning. Number 3. Full destabilization. In this case, all 4 wheels slide and lose traction, causing the direction and the movement to be totally unpredictable. Getting out of a drift and getting the car straight again can be tricky. If your car starts drifting, don't panic. Another mistake people make is twisting and turning the wheel in all directions to get out of the drift, which can actually make the situation worse. Turning the wheel in all directions causes the car to oversteer in the opposite direction, leading to fishtailing and a pendulum effect that can be hard to control. The trick is to ease off the power smoothly and turn the steering rapidly and decisively back to the straight ahead position. Don't let the steering run through your hands, as this won't give you the control that you need. If your car is wheel drive, pull back on the throttle and turn your wheel in the direction of the drift. If your car is front wheel drive, pull the throttle up. Once the car is out of the drift, immediately turn the wheel to its initial front position, or a new drift will start. The truth about your parking brake. Of all the aspects of driving, parking should be the most straightforward. Basically, you take the keys out of the ignition and get out of the car, hopefully after putting it in park. Oh, and if you're on an incline, maybe pull the parking brake. If you don't, you might end up like this guy, which is simultaneously the worst and best case scenario. But here's something that most people don't know. You should probably put on the parking brake regardless of whether you stopped on the taxiway of a Delta terminal or at the summit of Mount Everest, just to keep it in good working order. You see, the parking brake is also commonly known as the emergency brake, and as the name suggests, it could be used in a situation when your brakes fail. It overrides the hydraulic mechanism normally used to control the brakes and stops you with steel cables. But the problem with steel cables is that they often rust and corrode, particularly after long periods of not being used. The way parking brake cables are designed, if you don't engage the brake every so often, the corrosion builds up and will cause them to fall apart and fail when you least expect it. Don't put it in neutral at stoplights. Some people believe that keeping your car in drive at a red light wears out your transmission, while others just don't like keeping their foot on the brake pedal when stopped at a red light. Whatever the reason, it's still better to keep your car in drive than to switch it to neutral when stopped at a red light. First off, when your car's in neutral, you don't have as much control over it, so if you ever need to make an emergency maneuver, you may not be able to execute it in time. Also, if you forgot to put your car in neutral and the light turns green, you'll end up revving the engine, wasting fuel. Another strategy people use at stoplights is the emergency brake, thinking that it will save them gas. But in reality, this is completely unnecessary. In fact, the fuel loss is minimal even if you push the brakes in while keeping the gearbox in drive mode. The actual damage takes place when you shift in and out of neutral. Under any and all circumstances, never coast in neutral. You might think this is going to save you some gas, and this somewhat makes sense. You're driving downhill, so why not let gravity take over by putting the car in neutral? But in reality, it's the opposite. Today's modern cars are designed in such a way that they save fuel even if the gear is in drive. They simply cut the fuel supply when going downhill. Secondly, and most importantly, putting your car in neutral while driving downhill actually puts you in danger. It reduces your ability to control the vehicle, and we're sure that's the last thing that you want. When going downhill in neutral, you'll only be able to slow down and not speed up during an emergency maneuver, but the problems don't stop there. Doing this also cuts the car's oil supply, so the transmission doesn't get the proper lubrication for smooth operation. This results in significant wear and damage, which can cost you an arm and a leg. Furthermore, your car's engine runs at its lowest RPM, and the oil pump works the slowest when you move in neutral. As a result, the engine doesn't cool down as well as it should, and could actually fail due to overheating. Never launch your car while in neutral. Just to be clear, we're not talking about launch control, but another lesser known way that people launch their car. You see, some individuals launch their car from a standstill by revving up the car while it's still in neutral, and then switching the gear to drive to accelerate really fast from a stop position. This causes serious harm to the bands and clutches of the automatic transmission. When you shift, they cause friction to move definite parts, and if you rev in neutral and then immediately switch to drive, these bands and clutches wear out prematurely, which can prove fatal for your transmission. If you keep launching your car this way, these parts won't be able to hold friction anymore, causing the transmission to slip when it's in gear. Although clutches and bands are affordable, what will cost you an arm and a leg is removing the transmission and taking it apart to replace the damaged parts. Furthermore, launching your car during the winter season can be particularly problematic. Your car's oil thickens and moves slowly when the weather is cold. If you shift into gear and start driving at high speeds from the beginning, there's a high chance of sustaining severe internal damage to your transmission. Always avoid keeping the gas tank on low. Plenty of us are guilty of driving our cars with the gas tank on low, even though we know it shouldn't be done. Sometimes there's simply no gas stations around, or sometimes you could just be low on cash, but driving low on fuel can cost you much more in the long run, particularly if you have an automatic transmission. The biggest problem is the car's fuel pump, which sends gas from the tank to the engine. It's a crucial component in getting your car running, but it has a tendency to fail and leave you stuck on the highway when you run your car low on gas. Having the proper amount of gas keeps the fuel pump's electric motor at a stable and low temperature. The gas in your car acts like a coolant for the fuel pump's motor, so when you run very low, this allows the fuel pump's motor to suck in hot air, causing the fuel pump to wear prematurely and ultimately fail. In addition to overheating and wearing out the fuel pump, running an older car low on fuel tends to pull up sediment from the bottom of the gas tank. This sediment can clog up the fuel pump's filter. Once this happens, your car's engine is starved of adequate fuel, resulting in complete engine failure and potential damage to your transmission, leaving you both stranded and with an expensive repair bill. Never, under any circumstances, let water get in the transmission. Getting water in your transmission can be a huge problem, and even a small amount can prove to be fatal. When water gets inside an automatic transmission, the clutch's friction lining absorbs it and dissolves the glue that attaches the material to the clutch plates. Usually, some amount of the water will come out of the suspension and form white gummy masses in various areas of the unit. This is why your transmission can't be flushed to remove all of the water. Additionally, the presence of water will cause rust to form on the transmission's gears and metal parts throughout. The amount of water and the length of time that it's inside of the unit will determine the extent of the damage. But to resolve the problem, you'll need to overhaul the entire transmission, costing you thousands of dollars.
Well guys, those are 9 things you should never do in an automatic transmission car.
If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. Also, if you like what you see of the channel, subscribe and put post notifications on. You could also follow the channel on Instagram at Modern Muscle YT. I'm Jeff from Modern Muscle, and I'll see ya next time.